basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
That's US President Donald Trump, furious at both Israel and Iran as his efforts to contain another war in the Middle East and his peacekeeper image faced a big blow. Trump, once a casino owner, placed the biggest bet in his high-stakes presidency when he ordered US bombers to decimate Iran's nuclear facilities on June 22nd.
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Trump took a plunge into the decades-long conflict between two powerful countries in the region that risks turning into a new forever war. But how successful has he been in his bold political gamble? Seven B-2 Spirit bombers entered Iranian airspace on June 22nd. Three main nuclear sites were bombed in the largest B-2 operational strike in US history. And America has now officially entered another war in a faraway land. After the high-risk campaign, Trump was also quick to force the parties to a ceasefire and limit US involvement in the war, all at the right time. Experts say the president can claim the most significant foreign policy and military success of his time in the Oval Office. He appeared to have won a bet that many skeptics saw as irresponsible. Trump showed he could hammer Iran's nuclear plants without plunging the US into a new Middle East quagmire to mirror Iraq. The potential for political reward over such a bet could be high, but it would largely depend on whether Trump can maintain the fragile peace he is trying to forge between Iran and Israel. There is also a high risk of events spiraling out of Trump's control. Early on June 24th, just hours after Trump announced a break in the hostilities, Israel accused Iran of firing ballistic missiles and vowed to tremble Tehran and attack with force. Trump expressed frustration that Israel had launched an attack on Tehran. A ceasefire that he had proudly announced had collapsed. Trump said he was very unhappy with both Israel and Iran before announcing the ceasefire is now in effect shortly afterwards. But how long can the ceasefire hold? No one can truly say. Trump hailed the US mission by likening the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, claiming it marked the end of hostilities between Israel and Iran.
But had we not succeeded with that hit ended the war. That hit ended the war. I don't want to use an example of Hiroshima. I don't want to use an example of Nagasaki. But that was essentially the same thing. That ended that war. This ended that with a war. If we didn't take that out, they'd be fighting right now.
I think the ceasefire is unlimited. It's going to go forever, Trump told NBC News on June 24th, predicting that Israel and Iran will never be shooting at each other again. The bold claim rattled many, as the Middle East is seen as the graveyard of American presidencies. Trump's bid to claim success of Iran's Operation Midnight Hammer may also be dented if it is confirmed that US airstrikes failed to completely destroy Iran's nuclear program. An early Pentagon intelligence assessment of the attack, released on June 24th, said US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities did not destroy the country's nuclear program and probably only set it back by months. However, the White House contradicted the Pentagon, saying the flat-out wrong assessment was leaked by a low-level loser in the intelligence community.
The mission, which will go down in the history books, was an overwhelming success, and there was no indication to the United States that any of that enriched uranium was moved prior to the strike.
Trump also insisted that the US strikes resulted in the total obliteration of Iran's nuclear capabilities, setting the country's atomic program back by decades.
I think basically decades, because I don't think they'll ever do it again. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to take their oil, they're going to have some missiles, and they'll have some defense. I think they've had it. I mean, they just went through hell. I think they've had it. The last thing they want to do is enrich.
The Republican leader likely believes that a quick end to the fighting would shape his presidency and legacy and boost a foreign policy previously marked by failures like the stalled peace effort in Ukraine. But can Trump, who the world has called the master of chaos, be able to bring a forever peace in the blood-soaked region? If Trump succeeds in his efforts to push Iran to abandon its nuclear weapon ambitions, It would be a legacy-building achievement in a region that has seen America pulled into wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The crisis in the Middle East is affecting Trump's domestic policies. He has been accused of ordering military action without providing evidence that there was an imminent threat from Iran. His own intelligence community found no evidence that Tehran is building a nuclear weapon, but Trump chose to believe otherwise. US's strikes on Iran only reinforce the criticism that the president shows contempt for Congress's constitutional role. Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat of Virginia, said on Fox News Sunday, "It's unconstitutional for a president to initiate a war like this without Congress." Even Trump's own party, the Republicans, have been divided. Some, like Congressman Thomas Massie, wrote on social media that this is not constitutional. Trump responded fiercely by saying he will back a primary challenger to Massie, sending a clear message to others in the party who may consider criticizing him. Meanwhile, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth tried to justify why it was lawful for Trump to attack Iranian nuclear sites.
The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Some critics have argued that attacking Iran is much more dangerous and carries too much risk of escalation into a major armed conflict for one man to decide. Trump's intervention is expected to carry far-reaching implications, not just for US domestic politics and foreign policy, but also for the geopolitics of the Middle East and broader Asia. Trump is facing opposition from within his own Make America Great Again movement. He has all along been saying no to a nuclear Iran, while at the same time has expressed that he has no desire to drag the US into another war, both of which are contradictory goals. Critics say Trump has already diluted the MAGA brand by doing what he swore he wouldn't do, which is involve the United States in another conflict in the Middle East. So just in the first 6 months of his second term, Trump risks fragmenting the very movement that helped power him back into office.
His run for office was initially premised on the idea that he was going to avoid foreign entanglements. And so I think there are big questions too. It's just not just about, well, is this a smart move for us to get militarily involved, but what is it going to get us caught up in? And there are big divisions within the Trump's camp, within the Republican Party, over where exactly this is going to go.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Georgia congresswoman and MAGA firebrand, hit out at Trump for authorizing the strikes. Greene argued that US's involvement wastes resources to feed the military-industrial complex. America is $37 trillion in debt, and all of these foreign wars have cost Americans trillions and trillions of dollars that never benefited any American. American troops have been killed and forever torn apart physically and mentally for regime change, foreign wars, and for military-industrial-based profits. "I'm sick of it," Greene wrote in a social media post. The Republican leader echoed a sentiment that was often repeated by Trump allies throughout his electoral campaign in 2024 when he promised peace. However, after the ceasefire was announced, Greene said, "I do think President Trump is handling this very well." Trump's choice to hit Iran is also likely to pose problems for whichever Republican tries to claim power in the next presidential election. In 2028, the question of foreign intervention could be a dividing line. It will be a litmus test as people struggle to define what MAGA is. In the aftermath of the strike, the White House largely left it to Vice President J.D. Vance, one of the most isolationist members of the administration, to defend Trump's decision.
And to the Americans who are worried about this becoming a protracted conflict, I think the president solved that very quickly. Not only did we destroy the Iranian nuclear program, we did it with 0 American casualties, and that's what happens when you've got strong American leadership.
Vance, seen as one inheritor of the MAGA movement after Trump leaves office, has been broadly skeptical of or opposed to foreign intervention. But in 2028, Vance may be forced to reconcile his support of the strike on Iran with his personal politics. A Reuters Ipsos poll released on June 25th shows that only 36% of those surveyed supported US strikes against Iran's nuclear program. The poll shows Trump's approval rating has also fallen to 41%, a new low for his second term. His foreign policy received even lower marks. However, if the conflict cools down, Trump is expected to get a domestic political boost, at least in the GOP, and be able to heal rifts in his MAGA base, where some supporters feel he has broken his promise to start no new wars. While a fragile truce plays out between Israel and Iran, can Trump prevent another forever war in the Middle East? And is his breakthrough in Iran for real or just another illusion?